Good afternoon, everybody. It is April 13th, folks, and we've had another exciting day in the stock market. We continue to hit new highs as we speak. The S&P closed at a new high today. The NASDAQ, which is in terms of the QQQ, that closed out at a new high. Again, it hit 341.08. And, Russell 2000 is a little down from its peak. But just in general, everything has been going up. Even with all this inflation, even treasuries rallied today, which is pretty interesting because treasuries went up about 75 basis points today, even though the inflation number was worse than anticipated. Gold as well as silver went up. It is just green light ahead, folks. Nobody is concerned at all. When that happens, folks, you should be a little concerned. And once again, I know I kind of sound like a broken record at times, but the VIX is it just closed just a tad below 1666. It closed, and let me show you right now real quick, just so that you know what I'm talking about. I'm going to put this on, and we're going to go right here to the VIX. So real quick, if you go to the VIX, which is the volatility index, I've talked about this before, you can just see that they just close it right below their favorite number, which is 1666, which is, I always find that fascinating, folks. But between the VIX being this low, oil prices rallying another percent today, these things are up basically 100% in a year on the USO. I talked about that today, that the government is only saying energy prices are up 22% in the past year, but meanwhile, the proxy for oil prices is up 100% in the past year. And food inflation, the government's saying is only up 3.5%, but meanwhile, you would never guess that looking at how things have been going in the grocery stores and so forth, and how pricing is there. And, once again, with regards to, somebody made a comment to me earlier with regards to, the housing, housing inflation or rental markets. Well, it's not a complicated thing, folks. And this is a good segue. I want to talk about cap rates, and I want to talk about how rental rates are usually set. Okay. So if you have, let's keep it real simple. I'm going to just say you have a building and it's worth, real simple, you paid cash for it. It's worth $200,000. And this building that's worth $200,000, it has taxes on it of $4,000. Okay. So $4,000, it's worth $200,000. You have no debt on it. Just keep it super simple for this example. And you need to earn a risk-free rate. So the risk-free rate in the economy over time tends to be about 2.7 to 3.3%. That's the productivity growth rate of the economy over time. That means Americans overall, at each year that we are alive, collectively as a nation, as a species, I guess, as I don't want to say species because we're only talking about the United States here. So as Americans, as our country gets a little older and it gets a little smarter and wiser, hopefully, that we get a little wiser as we get older, that entire process, we get to go up by about 3% a year in terms of how efficient we are, that we make fewer mistakes. We are better, using our time a little better. So that's what the risk-free rate tends to be set off of, is productivity. So now, productivity at 3%. So then there's inflation. So as we know, the Fed is targeting 2% inflation, even though I think that's a disaster. I think it's a way that they're debasing the value of our money and chasing us into risk assets. I think it's a horrible thing that they're doing this. But since they are doing it, and they're telling you that they're doing it, you need to be paid at least 2% just to stay even. So if you know that the use of your money should at least earn you how productive we get over time, that's 3%. plus you have inflation, that's 2%. That gives you an idea of what bonds should be selling for. Bonds should be selling for about 5% yield. Well, they're not, folks. So that basically implies what? That you have some risk if you own bonds, if you think you should earn 5% over time to cover your cost of inflation as well as productivity. Now, you could be saying, Bobby, I don't think productivity is going to be 3% anymore. That's a very legitimate argument. And so you could price that by saying, you know what, Bobby, I think it's only going to be 1. And so I only need to make 3% on my bonds. And that's what makes a market, folks. Some people don't want to buy until they get 5. They get paid 5%. Other people are like, I don't care. I'll take my 3. And so that's what the bid-ask spread is. So anyways, that's 5%. So now you have risk and there's illiquidity in a piece of property. So the best way to think about it, if you sell a $200,000 piece of property and you owe 5% of the value, that's what these realtors take, folks. They're taking $10,000 from you to sell a $200,000 property. Well, you can say that you need to be paid back for that. So that's a loss of income somehow. So if you own that property for 5 years and they take $10,000 from you, then by default, they took $2,000 a year over 5 years. We did straight line, folks. Nothing complicated here with compounding of money or time value of money. We're just going to go straight line. So they take $2,000 a year for 5 years is $10,000. $2,000 a year divided by $200,000 is 1%. So that means you need to get at least 1% more per year if you're going to sell that apartment building within 5 years. Now, if you're going to sell it in 10 years, you might say, you know what? I only need to get 0.5% more per year. You see how this works, folks? So 5% plus you need at least 1 for your cost of selling it when you're ready to sell this thing. You should never assume you're going to own it forever. So now you need 6. But now you're like, okay, Bobby, you got me. The use of my money, I need to make sure I can get my money back from realty fees. That's $10,000. So I need 1% a year for that over the next 5 years. Okay, then I need my inflation number. I got to keep up with money. So that's 2% there. So then it's like you're telling me that we get more productive as a society by 3% a year. I'll go with you on this one and see what it looks like. So then you're like 3 plus 2 plus 1 is 6%. So now you need 6%. But then you're like, you're living in an area where taxes might be going up on your properties, and you got someone like Kevin Chicken Legs Burns, who's doubled taxes even though the population hasn't gone up in the past 12 years. You got a mayor just like I do, where you have somebody incompetent and doing a lot of really crazy stuff, and he's just waiting for the investigation to kind of carry out and show everybody what he's been up to. And so now you're like, okay, well, since I don't know what's going to happen, and maybe they're going to have another COVID type of situation, and maybe I can't get people to pay the rent, and the government tells people they can stay in the house without paying anything, and I have to eat it. I got to eat those losses. Well, you need to be paid for that risk, folks. Obviously, last year was one of these crazy years, but that's called risk premium. So it's like, okay, what is the risk of owning this thing? Well, and usually an equity risk premium in the stock market is 3 to 5%. So in this example, we're just going to go on the low end. We're going to go 3%. We're going to say, Bobby, I want 3%. So now we're at 3 for risk-free, 2 for inflation, 1 for your cost of expenses, and then 3% for risk. Now, keep in mind, you still have to maintain this damn building. So you got to put up money every year to fix this thing. So let's just assume you're putting $2,000 a year aside, which is on the low side, but just for this example's sake, we'll do it at $2,000 a year. So now we're up to 10% because 2,000 divided by 200,000 is 1%. So we have risk-free rate 3, 2% inflation, 1% cost of selling the building. Now we're up to 6. Then we need 3% for risk that we're taking on owning this thing because of people like Kevin Chicken Legs Burns. And then we need another 1% for maintenance cost. Okay, so we're at 10%. So you're like, okay, Bobby, 10%. How much we need to collect in rent? And I would tell you, if this thing is worth $200,000, you need to collect $20,000 in rent. Plus, they should be responsible for paying the taxes. Now, keep in mind, I told you that $2,000 of miscellaneous expenses, that's for outside the structure. So the tenant inside is usually responsible for taking care of what's inside the building. But the outside of the building, you're on the hook for, folks. So you should put aside some money. So that might be the roof. That might be the sidewalk needs to get replaced, or there's a crack or something. There's a bunch of things that $2,000 covers, but what happens inside caused by the tenant, they're responsible for. So if there's wear and tear on the refrigerator, for example, depending on your lease, they might be the ones on the hook for it, folks. And so, anyways, in this example of 20,000, I basically said, okay, folks, property taxes, we're going to strike them at 2% of property value. That's 4 G's. So now we're at 20,000 is what we need to get paid to maintain this property and take the risk and properly get paid for what we just bought. So 20,000 plus $2,000, $4,000 for property taxes is 24 grand. That's a nice number. 24,000 divided by 12 months is 2 grand a month. There you go. 2 grand a month. That's what you need to make for your property. So if your property is worth 400,000, you need 4 grand a month. Your property is worth 600,000. You see where this is going, folks? You need 6 grand a month. Not 600,000. Sorry, you need 60,000. You need 5,000 a month. Okay, I was just kind of I was going up a little too fast. I got a little excited. Anyways, with regards to that's how much you need to get paid. So why am I telling you this long-winded explanation about a property and how property prices are going up? Because if a property in this country is going up 10% year over year, 10% year over year, and you say, Bobby, I'm a little confused. My property went up 10% this year. And, my neighbors went up by 15%, and this other property went up by 100% in the past 4 years, which over the past 4 years, that means that it's gone up, not straight line because you got to compound it. But, let's just say straight line, it went up by 25% a year for 4 years, straight lining it. Okay. Now you sit there and you're like, hey, Bobby, I'm a little confused. The government said that the rental rate, the inflation rate for rents is up 2%. And there we go, folks. You say, that's a bunch of bullshit. You can't have property prices across the country going up 10 to 15% and with a straight face tell everybody your rents are only going up 2% on average. What world are these people living in, folks? And this is what I'm talking about. Nobody questions these morons and these jerks and these cheats, because when they do this crap, it makes you think. It's like, I keep going back to the line from the casino. I'm going to have to get that clip. I may have to pay a little royalty to somebody no other than Robert De Niro, which is a piece of garbage. Anyways, I don't like that guy for a bunch of reasons. But he does have some great lines in some movies. I'll give him that. But anyways, one of the lines in the movie, in the scene from Casino, and I don't know how I play the sound on this thing. I got to get this figured out for StreamYard. But what I would tell you is, with regards to Casino, he says, with the slot machine, I use this example a lot. The slot machine, it's like the guy, somebody won I think it was $25,000 3 times in a row on a slot machine by the door, right? Long story, I won 10,000 quarters once in a slot machine off 75 cents. Anyways, I played right by the door. I heard this rumor that if you play by the door and it gets a little action going, that sometimes they set those machines to get people excited to come into the casino. Well, I was the beneficiary of 10,000 quarters one time with 75 cents in one of those machines. So every time I go to Vegas, I put 75 cents in one of the machines and see if I get lucky again. Maybe lightning will strike twice. But anyways, I didn't gamble the rest of the weekend, by the way, folks. So that was literally it. I was like, I'm stopping while I'm ahead. I'm up 10,000 quarters, $2,500. I'm out of here. I just came here to have a good time. I didn't come here to gamble. So anyways, with regards to this whole concept, with inflation and so forth, you need to think about it in the context of what you're paying for things. And if you're if you know that you're chasing and you feel pressure to buy something or to step up and buy a property because you're scared you're going to miss out, you should kind of do the math and say, can wages in the overall economy go up that fast to justify that price? Are you seeing people around you, when properties go up 50% in 3 years or 4 years, if properties go up 50%, do the people in that community, did their wages go up 50%? Now, if your answer is no, Bobby, they went up by 5%, maybe 10, okay? And then I'm going to ask you a simple question. Do you think their wages are going to jump up all of a sudden for some reason that you just haven't thought about? And if the answer is no, I can't think about why everybody's going to start making 30 or 40% more, then my short answer to you is you should really think twice about paying a 50% premium for a property that was just there 3 years earlier. I think you could be playing with fire. But, you got to remember, this is educational purposes only. You have to make your own decision, and you need to look into it, and you need to understand what's causing that to happen. And trust the math, and trust your instinct and the logic of what you're seeing with your own data. I'm gonna sit here. I'm gonna show you guys a nice little funky little chart because my battery's kind of running low very fast on my computer, and I don't want to run out in the midstream here because that would be extremely aggravating, and I don't want to see that happen. So what I'm going to do is, let me see here. If I go to the screen real quick, okay, and we're just going to type in, you know what we're going to type in, folks? We're going to type in inflation over time, 20 years, okay? And let's see if we can pull up what inflation looked like going back 20 years. So this is 21 years. Okay, so this is the U.S. inflation calculator, and I was hoping that we would be able to see a nice little chart. I've never looked at this one before, folks, but you can see right here that inflation right here, you can see the different numbers. So 3% annual inflation, 1.7, it dropped to 0.7. But you can see right now that inflation has been around 2%, when you kind of smooth it all out over the past decade, okay? And so that number of, that inflation number is kind of, that incorporates not just the price of what you pay for your gas at the pump, but it also incorporates what you pay for your housing and so forth. And so if you think that number is pretty good over time of telling you what's taking place, then you should use it somewhat as a guidepost as to how you're making your own decisions. Now keep in mind, folks, the world does change from time to time. And right now we're in one of these weird spots where there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty because of the amount of money that the Federal Reserve has been putting into the system. Now, the last time this happened, okay, I'm not going to kid you, it was a pretty shitty time for the real economy at times. It was back in 1999 and 2000. The Federal Reserve, because of this problem called Y2K, for those of you who remember, Y2K, which was this bug, we're going to have all these problems on computers. The whole world was going to shut down on January 1st of 2000. Anybody remember that? Well, the Federal Reserve pumped in a tremendous amount of money into the stock market, into the markets to deal with this risk. And then sure enough, what ended up happening, everything went through the roof. Everything was flying high. Everybody was super excited. There was the new economy. That was the big phrase. It's the new economy. No more recessions. No more recessions, folks. And then it proceeded. I'm going to show you another chart here. So we're going to go right back to what the hell happened in 2009. Okay? Or 2000. So if we go to 2000, and we're going to look at this NASDAQ back then, folks. So I want to show you, because right here, 1999, you can see, we're going to control this up here. you can see that right here. It went. The Nasdaq was 52.97 in 1999. It hit 118 less than a year later. It doubled, right? Doubled right there. You see that? $118 from and so here we go. We go down, and what happened? That 118 dropped to $23. $23 in 2002. 2021 kind of bounced around. 21, 22. And so what is baloney, Catherine? Our housing has doubled in 8 years. We were taking furloughs and pay cuts. We had frozen wages and pay cuts already for 5 years. We only got 5% raises. What is baloney? I'm a little confused. I'm not sure what you mean, Catherine. I'm working 60 hours a week now to have the spending powers I had in the mid-90s. Catherine, everything you're saying is exactly what I'm talking about. We're playing along with this game where we just keep chasing up these assets. And this is part of the problem, is they're going to continue to strip away more and more of our freedom by having us play this game in which we're bidding up and chasing overinflated assets. And that's why I'm saying that we need to come up with a better way to avoid overpaying for the one of the largest assets in people's portfolio across America, which is their housing and so forth. Hey, Catherine, I agree with you that it's worse than 2%. I couldn't agree with you more. That's the whole point of this analysis, is to show people how the government lies to us. They lie to us consistently. That's one thing that the government is consistent about. They're consistent at lying with the numbers. And so I agree with you, Catherine. Inflation has been far more than 2% a year. I've talked about the oil index, okay? And you know what? This is a good review. I'm going to show you guys something real quick here. We just talked about the Nasdaq, okay, and what happened there. But I want to show you what the minimum wage back in 1970 was, right? So here we are. We're going to go to 1970, and we're going to see that right here in 1970, you can see that minimum wage was about $1.60, okay, in 1971. Okay, so we're going to go 40 years. So right now, no, that's 50 years ago. So 1971 to today is 50 years on the nose. 2021 minus 71 is 50 years, right? Everybody agrees with that? I'm doing the math right? I'm just kidding around. Okay, so remember that number, $1.60 an hour. So now we're going to go to oil prices, commodity price, CL1 is oil. And we're going to go back to, let's go back and see if we can see it in 1971. Okay? Let me see if they're going to give it to us. Hold on. Sometimes we have to find it from a different source. Hold on. We're going to have to go somewhere else. So if we're going to go, we're going to have to use the Google, as George Bush would say. Oil price per barrel, 1971. Okay? Let's see if we can get a quick number. Okay, folks. Here we go. So $3.60. Okay? Now keep in mind, I'm not sure how they calculated this, but it's a good proxy. So $3.60. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take Excel here, and we're going to go right up here, and we're going to just do a real simple thing here. We're going to say, okay, Bobby, it was $1.60 was what minimum wage was in America, and then oil was $3.60 a barrel. So oil was $3.60 a barrel in 1971, and I've cited this number before. I've done this analysis, and you say, okay, what's $3.60 divided by 160? That's 2.25 hours worked. So if you worked for 2.25 hours, Catherine, in 1971, at minimum wage, mind you, you would have been able to buy 1 barrel of oil for 2.25 hours. So the question becomes, okay, well, how much money does the average person, what is the federal minimum wage in America? Federal minimum wage in America, right? We're going to go, boom, right here, federal minimum wage, $7.25 an hour. Look at that. So we're like, okay, Bobby, federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. in this country. So 7.25. And then we're going to say, okay, well, before I only needed to work 2 hours to buy a barrel of oil. How much should oil be per barrel? 725 times 225. It should be $16.31. That's what it should be. Because I want to keep my if I work 2 hours and 2.25 hours, I want my barrel of oil. Pay me in oil. I want 2.25 barrels of oil. If I'm a minimum wage worker in America, why should I be worse off than I was in 1971? That's a damn good question. Well, let's look at what the price of oil is per barrel. Commodity, CL1 is the thing, and Bloomberg does a quick. Oh, look at that! It's $60. Isn't that something? So, how many hours do we need to work? If a barrel of oil is $60, okay, a barrel, and hold on a second here. We're gonna go back here. It's giving me grief here. Come on, guys, let's go. Let's go. What's going on here? Why is this not working? Hold on. I'm trying to do my control shift. Okay, and I don't know, folks. My Excel is giving me grief. They don't want you guys to see this. So Microsoft has decided to infect my system and say, Bobby, don't show people what the hell's really going on. But anyways, if we took $60, and you guys can have your own Excel file, and $60.18, and you divided it by 7.25, there you go, 8.275. Catherine, you rounded it up, so there you go. So you need to work 8 hours for 1 barrel of oil, and you used to work 2. So here's my problem, Catherine. The productivity of America has gone up by about 3% a year. So we are more productive and we are more efficient today than we were in 1971. Would everybody agree with that statement? Can I get somebody to say, yes, I agree with that statement, Bobby? You're not crazy. We are more productive 50 years later in the U.S. economy than we were in 1971. Can I get any kind of response out there? Is anybody watching this? Just like, yes, Bobby, we're more productive. So you ask yourself a simple question. If you were compounding at 3%, right? I told you inflation has been 3% per year for 50 years. What does that give you guys? 3% for 50 years gives you, drum roll, you're 4.38 times as productive. So somebody today is 4.38 times as productive. So my simple question to you is, if we're 4.38 times more productive than we were in 1971, why the hell do we have to work 4 times as much for our 2 barrels of oil? How does this work, folks? Can you please explain this to me? How are we working 4 times as much when we're 4 times as productive? It's supposed to be the inverse, folks. If you're 4 times as productive, if you did 2 hours of work, you only need 30 minutes of work today. You do 1 hour work, you only need 15 minutes. Oh, but Holly, where does the inflation come from? So keep in mind, folks, we've lost since 1971, the average minimum wage worker in the United States of America has lost over 88% of their purchasing power. We have institutionalized slavery in America economically. This is economic slavery. Make no mistake about it. When you have the productivity of the country go up 400%, and you have your purchasing power get decimated relative to minimum wage for what it costs to purchase oil or other things in the economy, they have institutionalized slavery. So then you got to ask yourself a question. How are they doing this, Bobby? How the hell are they pulling the scam off? And what I would tell you is the taxes in this country used to be $1 out of every 8 that you earned, you gave to the government. So I want you to think about this, folks. This is all Americans. This isn't just one group. If you went and worked 40 hours, 8 goes into 40 nicely. It's 5 hours. 5 goes into 5 times 8 is 40. So For every 40 hours you worked, you gave the government 5 of your hours. So you worked you worked 40 hours a week. You gave them 5 hours, and you said, "Here are your taxes. I'm going to keep 35 hours for myself." Okay, 35 hours for myself. Here's 5 for you. Now, the world we live in, you keep 1.5 out of every 2.5. Okay, so 2.5. Let's just do this real quick. We're going to go right back to the Excel in a second. So if you say if we go 40 hours divided by 2.5, that's 16 hours. So if we get, the government gets, we get $24. 24 of our hours we get to keep. Okay, on average in the United States, we keep 24 hours. The government takes 16. So think about that, folks. Before they took 5 hours from us a week to function, the government got all its shit together and did everything it was supposed to do for us for 5 hours a week of our time. Now the average American is giving them 16 hours of our time every damn week. Every one of us. We're giving them 16 hours of our labor every week. 150 million Americans that are working. We give them 16 hours a week, and we get to keep 24. So we went down from 35 to 24. We're worse off by 11, and the 11 went to the government. So then you ask yourself a question, Bobby, how many people work for the government? I'm a little confused. Like, what the hell is going on here? If there's 150 million of us working, and the government's taking over 3 times as much as it once did, it's taking 11 hours every week from every single American, okay? 11 hours a week from all of us, minimum. We're not even talking about debt, folks. That's another shit show. This is just labor. So now if we go 11 times 150 million Americans, okay? So now we're at, we're at 100. We're at 1.65 billion hours a week they're taking from us, okay? So 1.65 billion times 50, and you know what we're at, folks? We are at, let me see here. We're at 82.5 billion hours are being stolen of our life. So that's the way to think about it. They're stealing 82 billion hours from the average Americans that are working today. They're stealing it. I don't give a shit what you say. When they're taking that much money and we got nothing to show for it, they're taking it from the people that are working and they're doling it out to somebody else. And so that's how much our this is the real crimes, folks. You sit there and I was just talking with somebody that, they're like, hey, Bobby, somebody's stealing, right? They steal. What the hell do we do? It's like, we have a really weird system at times, because if you go in and you rob a bank and you steal $5,000, they'll lock you up for 25 years. Let's get that person. If you're a politician and you got $10 billion of spending and you're ripping off a bunch of money on behalf of people that voted you in or not voted you in, helped get you voted in by any means necessary. Let's get them in there. We got to make sure what is the saying? Vote early and vote often, right? That's the saying. Vote early and vote often. But my point is, you get people in there, you get everybody doing this crap, and next thing you know, it turns into the shit show that we have right now, and it's going to be a hell of a lot of work to dismantle this thing. That's all I can tell you. The amount of work that we have to get this thing righted, it's daunting. I'm not going to kid you. It's a daunting task, and I have some real simple solutions over time. One of them is, we should shrink the size of the government by 1% a year. Maybe we got to kind of scale it down. The other thing I have, there's talk about robots over time, like robotics and robots that are in our society. They're going to take away a lot of our jobs. And my attitude is, the robots should take away all the government jobs. Like let's have robots do the government jobs, because then we, the people, own the robots, and then the robots are just doing whatever the hell we need to have the government function. Problem solved. So we, the people, should own the robots that do all this work, and then we can perpetually shrink the size of government. That's the way we do it, folks. We have to fix it. I agree with you, Catherine. We do need to fix it, and it's going to be a lot of work and so forth. I'm just telling you, this stuff's been grating on me for a decade. So you guys, over a decade, probably almost 2 decades now. It's kind of interesting that that something involving voting would bring me out of my little shell, because I've been writing about this and talking about it for a long time, and because I've been doing this analysis, because this is what I do for a living. I analyze what companies to buy that know how to make money. And as a result of that, I kind of look at all the different ways our money is being stolen. It's just kind of the two things seem to go hand in hand. That I look at, okay, who's making money the right way, and who's making money that's a little suspect, and I try to do the right thing and only buy the companies that I think are doing it honestly. It's not easy, folks, because there are a lot of companies that they have very, very creative lawyers that will just push the law all the way up to the limit. They'll push it all the way up to where they can get it, so that then they can justify their actions. And we're lacking a moral compass in a lot of these individuals, and this is the reason why these scumbags want to try to kill God, kill religion, kill our freedom of speech, because if you can speak freely, if you worship God instead of worshiping other people or false idols, that takes away power from them. And so, anybody who's watching my Bible thing every night, the greatest book ever written, I think I'm on day 52 of my 365-day journey with the Bible in 1 year. I've never read it all in 1 year, folks. So all I can tell you is that we have to go back to the drawing board. And the drawing board is, we need to put God first, the 10 Commandments, and then the U.S. Constitution. And if we do that, we'll expose all of this crap and we'll dismantle it all. I do have faith that will happen, but it's not going to happen unless we get our priorities right, to recognize that we're all equal, we're all children of God. That's the way it is. Nobody can change that fact. That's the reality. That the 10 Commandments are a wonderful rule book. Some real common sense here, folks. Thou shalt not steal. thou shalt not kill. Just some good old classics that have served humanity well for 2,000 years. And then, the U.S. Constitution, for all of its people griping about it, 2/3 of all the Americans alive throughout our 40-year history have agreed to those rules as the rule book between our compact, or which is nothing more than if you think about it, it's a compact that we the people made in giving government power. I think that's a beautiful thing, and if we want to change it, let's get 2/3 of people to change it, not through cheating and not through a lot of manipulative things that are taking place that we all know what I'm talking about here, but actually by making the arguments and bringing the arguments to the public and debating them and figuring out what we could do to make our system better. And that's the way it should be done, not through backroom deals and shystery type of plots that are taking place behind the scenes. So with that being said, folks, I'm going to call it for tonight. Thank you so much for listening. And I will, I will see you guys tonight if you're joining me at 8:30. Otherwise, I'll be on at 7:45. I try to go on every day at 7:45 in the morning with what's going on with the markets and tie it into politics. And then also I do the same thing at 4 o'clock. So thank you guys for joining. feel free to share this video. I don't run any ads, folks, so get the word out. Nobody's getting bothered by a bunch of ads. And my wife is right. I sound better when I talk twice the speed. So if you're watching these clips and you kind of want to play catch up on a couple things, just put the little thing at 2 times X, and I think I do sound better when I'm talking faster. So thanks, Jerry. Thanks, Dallas, Mary, Elishiva, Holly, Matt, Uncle Downer, Baron, and everybody else that's joined that I don't see your names. And thanks again. I appreciate it, Holly. And I'm going to be setting up a website just in case they try to shut me up. So I'm in the middle of having that built. It's going to be Piton Points. If for some reason I get taken down, Piton Points. And feel free to keep that in mind if something ever happens to me and I go missing. So, or my website, which is Preactive Investments. So you guys have a wonderful evening, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you.